Over the past couple of weeks, my workshop has gone through a lot of improvements. Starting with my workbench here, which I completely refurbished, which, if you haven't seen that video by the way, consider clicking in the top corner to check it out. I also managed to get this nice secondhand shelf to add some storage to the space. Although we've done all these improvements, we still don't have a good place to sit in the workshop, so I think it's time for that to change. So as you can see here, we've got some lovely reclaimed wood that we're going to be making into something much nicer than what it currently is. And that something is going to be a stool for the workshop. Simply put, we have 3 different kinds of wood here that are going to be used for 3 different things on the stool. We have these 3 pieces, which are from pallets, and these are going to be our 3 legs. We have this piece here, which is from a garage that was being torn down. This is going to be our seat. And we have this piece here that I got as a cutoff from a salvage yard that is going to be our pegs for the legs. So, legs, pegs, seat. So why don't we start with getting the legs all prepped up and ready. Unfortunately, as I said, the legs that we're going to be using are from pallets. So the wood is very recycled, and because of that, it is going to have some problems we're going to have to deal with. And one of those problems is the nails sticking out of it. So when you're constructing a pallet, obviously you're going to be using nails to hold all of the boards together. But not ideal is when you have to use that wood for something else, namely carving it up on a lathe. Now when we're doing that, you really don't want any nails in it because you ruin all of your chisels very quickly by destroying them against the metal nails. So what we have to do is figure out how to get all of the nails out of here without ruining the wood that we're going to be using. While I was doing all of this measuring and cutting, I decided the best solution would be to simply push all the nails back out the way they were put into the wood. Now this should be completely good to go on the lathe. I'll do a check through to make sure there's no extra bits of metal, staples, or anything crazy hiding in it. But this should be good. That's 1 of 3 down, and I'm really happy about that. 2 more to go. Alrighty, now we've got 3 legs for our stool, all cut up to about the same length, and all in a way that will fit on the lathe. So we're going to carve these up on the lathe and make them look a little bit nicer. So let's do that. As you can see here, we've got a lot of dust and 3 finished stool legs. I did freehand all of the measurements, so they might not be perfect, but all in all, I think they're pretty close. So now that these are done, our next step is going to be carving up the seat for our stool. Because as of now, this is nothing. This is just a block of wood. So we have to turn this into our seat. So let's do that. So here is our actual chunk of wood. And there it is, our seat. And using this plate is how we're actually going to attach this onto the lathe. If you focus on the spinning piece of wood on the lathe, you can see how I carved it down from a square to a circle before ultimately reaching its final shape. Well, with any luck, that should be about all of the lathe work that I need to do. So what I'll be doing to clean off the surface of this is going to be using an orbital sander. Once that is done, we are simply going to attach the legs to this rather small seat top, and from there we will have ourselves a stool. Now the 4 holes we have here are pretty much perfectly centered on this piece, because these are where it was attached to the actual lathe itself. So if we use these as guidelines, we can get a pretty perfect idea for the cross section of this piece. And let's see how we did. Once again, not bad. There is 3 holes in a piece of wood. Very nice. Hopefully all of these will line up now, and we can start trying to test fit their legs into their respective holes. So this is too tall, obviously, and that was part of the plan. The main goal was to make sure all 3 of the legs fit in their respective holes, which they do just great. They're all relatively close to each other's angles that I wanted, which means the seat itself is pretty darn flat. Now, we need to make it so it can actually support my weight. Because as of now, I don't know how much I'd trust this current setup. She's still wobbly, but for a test fit, it all is looking very, very promising. All I'm doing here is cutting notches in the legs, cutting pegs to fill those notches, and gluing everything together. Now, we can wipe away some of our excess glue and wait for all of these joints to be ready to go. At this point, the glue joints are completely dry on the stool, and now we have to use a nice flat cut saw here to take off these extra nubs and then sand down the entire surface of the stool. From there, we have to shorten the legs because this is way, way too long for us to sit on. I mean, look at this, that's just not practical. So we probably need to bring it down by a couple of inches, and then it'll actually be a usable stool, which will be very nice. Measuring roughly from the seat part of the stool, I want to take off about 8 inches from each leg. Now, obviously, if I just take it off in plane with the legs themselves are not going to be flat, but having it be upside down and then measuring from the bottom up, we should be able to get some pretty clean feet. And we have Mark 1 of the stool. I still need to adjust the legs a tiny bit, but it supports my body weight, which is very, very cool. Also, it is a little bit more rickety than I would like, so using our brand new 3 cutoff pieces, we are going to add some support to the legs. After finishing up with carving, drilling a couple of holes, and getting everything assembled, the stool is just about finished. At this point, all the glue joints have fully dried, and now it's time to clean up all the excess glue, to sand down all of the legs and the surface, and then we can finish the project. Now, I don't have to be perfect with getting all the glue off, because this is just a workshop stool, and its purpose is a lot more functional rather than aesthetical. But I think it just looks a little bit better if we don't have big, drippy bits of glue all over the place. So that's why I am removing them. And it also gives me an excuse to use some chisels, which is always fun. To finish up, I did a little bit more work with the orbital sander and the chisels. And to cap off the project, I put 2 coats of tung oil on the stool, both to make it a little bit tougher to survive the workshop conditions, and to make the wood grain stand out a little bit better. Well, here we have it, the fully finished stool. The second coat of tung oil dried in nicely. It's not super glossy, but that's fine, considering this thing is going to get a lot of time sat on it and just being used and basically abused in this workshop. I'm pretty happy with how it's turned out. It obviously works, it can hold my weight, which is the main thing it needs to do. And it looks reasonably nice. It's relatively compact, relatively sturdy. I just anticipated doing a pretty good job here in the workshop. And what did it cost me? Just about nothing. Didn't use a single fastener. All of the wood was completely for free. The only things you could really factor into the expenses would be the tung oil I used and the wood glue, which would be probably under $5 for the entire project. So once again, you really can make a lot of things if you set your mind to it, even if the starting materials seem pretty trashy by comparison. Now obviously it's important to have an idea of what the project's going to be used for. Now this is a stool that is just for the workshop, and it was built as such. It's relatively sturdy, lightweight, and very cheap to make. This isn't something I would try to sell. I'd use nicer materials and better techniques. But for its purpose, this is completely functional and very effective at what it needs to do. And considering it was my first time trying out a bunch of these techniques, like using the pegs to widen the legs into the holes and adding the support rods and even building a stool in the first place, I think it turned out pretty good. And hopefully you guys agree. Well, if you're interested in more behind the scenes content where I showcase my process for making things and just explain a little bit of the method behind the madness, consider checking out my Patreon, link down below. But that's about all I have for this video, so thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.